I'm going to show you the complete AI SEO process to optimize your site for high rankings. I'm going to cover how to audit and optimize technical SEO, content, local SEO, backlinks, and ongoing strategies for 2024 into 25. I'll take you into some of these programs to show you step by step how it's done. By the end of this video, you'll be in the top 1% of AI SEO experts. Let's get to it. Click the link in the description to get my AI SEO slide deck. We're going to start with the AI SEO process. So the first thing you want to do is audit the site. It's always good to audit the site so you know what problems exist, you get a good feel for the site, and then it'll help you with the strategy moving forward. After auditing the site and fixing any issues, you're going to want to optimize the site. Here's the outline of how we're going to run through things. I'm going to show you how to do a technical audit, content audit, local audit, audit the backlink profile, keyword research, on-page optimization, ongoing SEO strategies, and off-page SEO. First, you're going to start with the technical audit. So the first thing you want to do is check out Search Console, export the 400 errors and any other error reports like discovered, not crawled, etc. And then you're going to want to look at the performance, index pages, core web vitals, all of that for any kind of inconsistencies. So when you're looking at the performance, look for drops in traffic or spikes in traffic to see if you can attribute what those are from. And you can use filters in there as well. And the last thing you're going to want to do is to check for any kind of manual actions or error messages. After checking out Search Console, you're going to do a full audit by crawling the site with Screaming Frog. You're going to export most of the bulk reports that are in the top menu, and I would also recommend exporting the Issues tab because that can give you insight into other issues you might not have seen. You're going to want to take a look at the robot's text in the Screaming Frog crawl to make sure that it's configured correctly and no important pages are blocked. A lot of people like to put a lot of extra stuff in the robots.txt, but it's not really needed because crawlers can ignore blocks by robots.txt. Even when running this crawl, I'm going to check ignore robots.txt. but report status. So everything has the ability to do this. So adding all these extra rules to your robots.txt is really not needed these days. Take a look at the pages that are no indexed and make sure you want those pages to be no indexed. Sometimes people no index pages on accident, so you want to make sure and confirm that these are supposed to be no indexed. Take a look at the redirects and just make sure all of those are supposed to be redirecting. If you have a large number of redirects, you're going to want to group those together using rules. And when I say a large amount, I mean 50,000 to 100,000 redirects, because those can cause speed issues if you have too many. But if you have anything under, I would say around 10,000, you should be good. 400 errors, these are client-side errors. And of course, we can fix these by adding redirects. So make sure you separate the internal and external links reports. And if you have a large amount of 404s, you can keep those. But if you have 404s that have broken backlinks, you always want to redirect those pages. And if you have a large amount of 404 errors, you can also use the AI called Get Redirects. I'll have a link here in the slide deck for that. It uses AI to group your 400 errors with pages that most similarly match that error, and it builds a redirect for them. So you can do this for hundreds or thousands of 400 errors and do that pretty easily with AI. 500 errors or server-side errors. So you just want to export the inlinks report for this and also remove those links from the pages. Redirect chains cause search engines to make an extra hop when they're crawling the site. So this can hurt your crawl budget. And we'll get into crawl budget here in a little bit. But when it comes to the redirect chains, you want to export the inlinks report and then replace the source URL redirect with the link of the final URL. Insecure content. So insecure links hurt the credibility of your site, and they also give a good opportunity for people to hack. So you're also going to want to export this inlinks report and replace the insecure links with secure links. Typically, this is just replacing the HTTP of the link with HTTPS, and that'll often make it secure. Check the sitemaps and make sure you check any of the URLs in the sitemaps that could be non-indexable, redirects, 400 errors, or anything like that. You don't want those in the sitemaps. Any kind of thank you pages that are typically no indexed, you don't want to include that in the sitemap. And we want to keep the sitemaps to a minimum unless it's a really large site. Typically, you can have 2 or 3 sitemaps, maybe one for posts and one for pages, and be good. If you have a really large site, over 5,000, 10,000 pages, then I would say you could use multiple sitemaps, such as for products or different types of things like that. Otherwise, we want to keep sitemaps to a minimum. Canonicals indicate the page that's to be prioritized by search engines. So we usually use this for similar pages to avoid keyword cannibalization. It's basically saying these 2 pages are very similar, but I don't want this page to be counted as the main page. I want the other page to be counted. So we'll put a canonical on that first page pointing back to the second page. And this just tells Google that we want that page prioritized. We don't want this other similar page prioritized. So just look for missing canonicals in Screaming Frog, and then you can fix those by adding a self-referencing canonical, which just means that it has its own URL as the canonical. And then you also want to look at the canonicalized list to make sure you want all those pages to be canonicalized. Make sure you want that canonical for a similar page on that page. Look at the URLs and make sure you check out the URL structures here. We're typically going to be looking at parameters, and we're going to make sure we're no indexing those parameters. So that's the URL with a question mark or something like that at the end of it. These are typically from search functions that are on the website. So we want to make sure we no index those so we don't have a lot of those popping up in the index and eating away at our crawl budget. Look for URLs that have uppercase because these can create duplicate URLs since all URLs default to the lowercase. So you're going to want to remove and redirect uppercase URLs. And also look for URLs with underscore. We want to redirect those using hyphens. Underscores provide a bad user experience, and they also can make things confusing for the search engines. So it's just a best practice not to use underscores in URLs, but rather hyphens. Take a look at the titles section. Really, we're just looking for missing, duplicate, over 70 characters or under 30 characters that we want to follow best practices with our titles. So this isn't necessarily a really technical thing, but this is an easy place for us to check it. And I usually include this within the technical audit. After looking at titles, we'll take a look at descriptions, and it's pretty much the same thing: missing, duplicate, or over 156 characters. 156 is the max, so we want to make sure all of our descriptions follow the best practices. Here's some other things to consider. That would be site architecture, URL structure, crawl depth, crawl budget issues, JavaScript, and then we can also look at the issues tab. So I'm gonna touch on each of these really quickly, and then we're gonna jump into Screaming Frog so I can show you exactly what to look for. So first we'll talk about site architecture, and usually we want to use subfolders to categorize the website. This helps to improve crawling and indexing. This also helps with user experience. So a lot of people like to debate whether it's better to have a flat site structure or to have a hierarchy with categories. And having a hierarchy with categories is much better because, for one, if you're auditing the site, it makes things really easy to filter out and separate. And also it makes things much better for the user when it comes to them knowing exactly where they are on the site. It also helps with link flow, link equity, domain authority, whatever you want to call it. It helps it to flow through the site much better as opposed to a flat structure where it really can't flow down to the category pages as it would with a hierarchy structure. So here's an example of the URL structures I was talking about. So you see we have these grouped by subfolders. So we have services, it goes to the service category, then it goes to the unique service. And so an example of this would be having a legal site go to practice areas, and then it has another page going to personal injury. And we indicate this within the URL structure, makes things easier for Google and for the users to know exactly where they're at. Crawl depth is something that's talked about a lot in SEO, and this just basically means you don't want pages to be too far away from the home page. So if you land on the home page and it takes you more than 5 clicks to get to a page, then that page has a high crawl depth. And typically it's recommended to keep pages around 4 to 5 clicks at the most. But I would say this depends on the site size. I have seen large e-commerce sites. I'm talking large as in 1 million, 2 million pages. And there was a few pages that had a crawl depth of 8, and those were still ranking well. So again, this is just recommended, but if you have a really large site, I would opt for organization over crawl depth. Crawl budget is the amount of pages that Google reserves to crawl your site. So basically Google will specify a number of pages that it's going to crawl on your site, and then it does that every time it comes back, unless it has reason to increase your crawl budget or decrease your crawl budget. If you have a large amount of low quality pages on your site, Google could decrease your crawl budget and not come back and crawl it as much every time because it seems to be low quality. This typically affects larger sites, usually over 10 to 15,000 pages, but it can affect smaller sites when you have that many low quality pages. Then Google can just reduce the crawl budget when it comes to your site. When it comes to JavaScript, you want to make sure you test the site with JavaScript off. So you can use the inspect tool to turn off JavaScript. And you just want to make sure the site completely functions without JavaScript on it, just in case anyone lands on the site and they're not able to access the JavaScript code. You still want them to be able to see the site, use it well, and convert. You want to make sure you implement specific structured data to the site. So you can go to schema.org and make sure you get the most specific schema as possible. So if you have a legal site, you don't want to just use local business schema. You want to use legal services schema. This is much more specific than local business and is nested under the local business structured data. I have a crawl running right now, and so I'm just going to take you through the things to look at and how to do this. This is basically an overview because I could make an entire course on just Screaming Frog because there's so many different functions it has and things it can do, but I'm just going to give you a pretty quick overview of how to easily do this without missing any significant issues. So while you're running the crawl, or after the crawl is finished, you're going to want to go over here to this right side, and you're going to want to go into the issues. And this will give you a pretty good indication of any of the issues on your site. And it also separates these by issue type and priority. So these ones that are high priority, you definitely want to take a look at, but they may not be that serious when it comes down to your site. For example, pages are no indexed, but these pages are supposed to be no indexed because they're tag pages. So while it says it's a high priority issue, it's not really an issue. But I would recommend going to this issues report and exporting this first, because this will just give you everything and you can see it really easily. Otherwise, we'll go back to this overview tab and we'll just go through each section just to make sure everything looks good. So everything I was mentioning in the slide deck is going to be right here. So first we have security. So any kind of mixed content issues. This will also include insecure content, and you also can bulk export these reports here. So we can go to response codes and we can get redirect chains, and make sure you get the internal redirect chain in links. You want to make sure you're getting these in links reports, the 400 errors, the 500 errors. You want to make sure you get these in links reports because it'll give you more information and it'll help you fix them easier. So the security issues, we have response codes. And so I'll go down here to internal response codes. So we have 200 pages. Looks like we have no 400 errors, 500 errors, nothing blocked by robots. So you just want to check all of these out to make sure this is all good. And then we'll also take a look at the external and make sure there's no 404 errors that we're linking out to. Take a look at the URLs, make sure there's no underscores, uppercase, multiple slash, parameters, everything we talked about earlier. Here's the page titles. So I have 6 duplicate page titles I want to take a look at. I also have some titles that are a little bit long. And again, we're looking at 70 characters. So Screaming Frog pulls the 60 characters, but we're more so looking for over 70 characters. Also look at the meta description issues. The H1s I would take a look at. Typically H2s aren't that important to take a look at, but just make sure nothing looks strange here. This content area can be a little bit off, so I don't typically put much into it, but you will want to take a look at low content pages just to make sure that's correct. Images, so missing alt text is the big thing there. Here's the canonicals, so I'm missing canonicals on about 80 pages. Pagination, and this has to do with you clicking a page to go from page 1 to page 2, making sure those crawl well. And that's a pretty in-depth topic, but just take a look here to make sure it looks okay. We have directives here, hreflang, JavaScript, links, and here is where you can look at pages that have a lot of external links or pages that have a lot of internal links. So you'll find that in this section here. Also pages with the high crawl depth like we talked about. Structured data, so it'll give you any kind of issues or warnings here. Any kind of sitemap issues, so like I was talking about orphan URLs, non-indexable, you just want to make sure none of that is in the sitemap. And when you do that, you have to check the XML sitemap option. So I just ran this crawl really quick using the default settings, but I can make another video showing you the exact settings to get everything out of Screaming Frog. Just let me know. Page speed, and that's pretty much it. We do have some Search Console data here. So it has the orphan URLs, and URL is on Google but has issues. Those are some things you'll want to take a look at, but you more than likely already saw those when you took a look in Search Console. So that's about all you'll need for Screaming Frog. So after you fix all of your technical issues, that's when you want to go back to Search Console and submit your sitemap that's been updated, and also submit your sitemap to Bing Webmaster Tools. You'll want to conduct a monitoring site crawl every 3 to 6 months, depending on the size of the site. If you have a really large site and you're frequently adding pages, frequently removing pages, then you might want to do it more often than that. And if you have a really small site and there's very little changes to the site except for blogs being added a few times a month, then you could probably make it even longer without doing a technical audit. But I would say go no longer than 6 months without doing an audit. And you can automate these technical audits using Screaming Frog, so it'll crawl your site every 3 months or however long you want it to be. You can set that with the scheduler, or you can use the AI software Labrica that continuously does it and points out these issues for you. When it comes to auditing the backlink profile, this is pretty quick. We just want to run a backlink audit using something like Ahrefs, SEMrush, etc. so we can see the backlinks for the site. The most important thing is to check for broken backlinks. So any pages you have that are 404 errors but had a backlink, you want to make sure to redirect those to fix those so you continue to get that link equity. You also want to check for toxic links, and you can use the SEMrush toxic link tool, or you can just take a look at it yourself, or you can use Moz or similar tools to see if links are marked as toxic. And you only want to disavow toxic links if necessary. So this is somewhat of a call you have to make on your own, but I would say if you don't have a large amount of toxic links, I would not submit a disavow file. So there's been a lot of conversation in SEO if you should disavow links or if Google just ignores them. And through my testing, it seems like Google will typically ignore them because of the negative SEO phase that came about 5 or 6 years ago. So they'll typically ignore these toxic links. But if you have a large amount of toxic links, I'm saying 60-70% of your backlinks are from spammy sources, then you may want to disavow those links. And this is if you have a lot of links, hundreds, thousands of links, and it's just a disproportionate amount of them are spammy, then you should do a disavow file. Otherwise, I wouldn't. I have the belief that you're essentially telling on yourself. Sometimes you might want Google to disavow these toxic links, but it just makes them take a closer look at your site, which you may not want. So I say only disavow if necessary. And then you'll also want to check the ratio of links by domain rating. So if you have 80% of your backlinks coming from domain ratings that are 80 to 90, and the rest of your domain ratings are under 5%, then this is a disproportionate amount of links in the 80 to 90 domain rating range. And that's not good. It should be pretty even across all domain ratings. But if there's one that's just really disproportionate, then that's something you're going to want to take a look at and try to build other types of links to make those more equal. Then run a content audit. So we'll use the Screaming Frog crawl. You can use the same one from the technical audit, or you can do a new crawl, and then you'll want to connect analytics, Search Console, and if you have the subscription, Ahrefs. And I would recommend using 6 months data when it comes to setting up this crawl. So after running the crawl, you're going to export the HTML report for the internal pages, and then you're going to filter for pages, and you're going to add page types and topics yourself. So this can be kind of time consuming, but it's usually worth it in the end. I would always recommend doing this. And then you're going to filter using clicks, conversions, sessions, position, and backlinks if you have that available. I would go in that order. I typically like to filter using clicks. This tells you what pages are getting the most traffic to the site. And then I would go with conversions and down the list. After you filtered out all your pages, you can give recommended actions for each of the pages. So create another column, and then I would use keep as is, prune, remove, and consolidate as the actions. So if it's a page that has 100 clicks or more in the past 6 months, we can keep that as is because it's performing pretty well. And this is also going to be dependent on your site size and on your traffic. If you have a site that gets a lot of traffic, maybe you want to just keep pages that are 1,000 clicks or more. Or maybe if you have a really small site that gets really little traffic, maybe you keep the pages that get 10 clicks or more. So that threshold is just going to depend on the size of your site and the amount of traffic you get. So this is something that's going to be up to you. You have to make the call on. After indicating what pages to keep, then you want to look at what pages to prune. So I typically would prune pages with less than 10 clicks in 6 months. And you don't have to remove the page for it to be pruned. Typically you do remove it when it's pruned, but you can also canonicalize or no index those pages as a pruning action. Then you're going to want to consolidate pages that rank for the same keywords as another page. So this takes a little bit longer to look into, but this is how you avoid cannibalization and fix it on your site. So you'll want to add the unique content from the worst performing page to the better performing page. Then you'll want to indicate pages to optimize. And these are just for your site goals. And these are typically going to be the money pages. When you do your content audit, you want to make sure you go here to configuration, and then you can go here to Google Analytics, and then you can add in your account. You can just sign in and it'll take you to Google to sign into your analytics account. And you can go here to date range. I like to do 6 months. And then here it has all the metrics. So if you have an e-commerce site, you can take a look at these. This is not an e-commerce site, so I'm going to just do conversions. I don't like to do views because it's usually too many for analytics 4. You can do revenue if you're tracking that in your analytics. And I just do the first sessions list here. And then I do total users. And then you can also add in other things here, but you can leave these as default for the most part. If you want, if you have a lot of uppercase URLs, you can have it match those, but typically you should fix those during the technical audit. And then you just click connect when that's all set up. And you can do the same thing with Search Console. Just click here. And then again, I do 6 months. And then you can also enable URL inspection if you want. And this just shows what Google Search Console is showing for that URL. And then you can also do hrefs here, and you just put in your API token, and then you can click connect. And again, you can decide what metrics you want. I usually just do backlinks, referring domains, and URL rating. And then you click OK, and you run your crawl again, and you're going to be pulling the HTML report from the internal crawl data. After you export the data, you can upload it to Google Sheets, and you'll have something like this. Go through and add filters to this, and then also you can segment each of the pages here. So we have page types, and I use foundational for pages that are just needed for the site but don't really serve a really specific purpose, like the home page, about page, contact page. we're not going to optimize those for keywords typically. Typically, the home page, we're looking for branding, and then the about page is going to be branding as well. So I would go through, you can add page, blog posts. I didn't put the entire site here because I wanted to keep it pretty simple, but you want to go through and add the page types. And this is much easier if you have subfolders. If you don't, you're going to have to go through and do it manually for the most part and just use the filters to the best of your ability. You can also add the topic for each of the pages, and make sure you don't go too in depth when you're adding these, because if you make it way too specific, it'll be much harder to group them together to find out if they're cannibalizing each other or not. And then I have all my stats here that I pulled from Screaming Frog. So the first thing I do is usually go to clicks, and then I'm looking at the pages that get the most clicks versus the ones that get the least amount of clicks. And then here, I'll add in another column. Here is where I can say keep as is. And then while I'm looking here at the bottom, this gets less than 10. So I could say prune. And then some of these pages are here kind of in the middle. I would say to optimize these. You just want to go through the entire list and do this for all these pages based on your thresholds. And so I like to use clicks. I think this is the best metric to use when it comes to this. You can also look at conversions as another way. So some of these actually get traffic, but they get way more conversions. So maybe I want to optimize some of these pages to get more conversions. And you can also focus on position. So these are the pages that are ranking the best of mine. I could optimize those or just keep them as is if I wanted. And then also you can filter by backlinks. So some of these pages have a lot of backlinks. Maybe we want to optimize these, and some of them don't really have as much. So it's really just up to you how you see fit. Just like we always say in SEO, this really depends. This depends on the site. How big is it? How much traffic does it get? What are the client goals? What are your goals if it's your site? So this is just really a tough thing to have some hard and fast rules for. I gave you some really good examples in the slide deck of ways you can put together your recommendation, but ultimately it's going to be a judgment call. When you're doing your content audit, you can also add the topics or the page type using AI. You can use ChatGPT to put your URLs in ChatGPT and tell it to come up with good topics, or you can go to your website and use a tool like Harpa, and you can use this to have it group your pages as well by URL. If you have a local site, you'll also want to check out the Google Business Profile. Look for opportunities like an incomplete profile, pictures, seed questions, and adding your own posts. AI tools like Profile Pro is good for audits and optimizing the Google Business Profile. I also like Local Falcon for taking a look at the target locations and the performances there. Aside from that, there's not much to do on the local side. I already covered schema, so you want to make sure your structured data and schema is good on the site. Make sure you got the geo coordinates in there. And otherwise, there's not a lot more to do as far as local audits. You'll also want to check out directories across the internet, anywhere where the name, address, and phone number is visible, to make sure those are consistent across all websites. Sometimes you may have a business that is maybe Suite 100, and in some places it'll say Suite 100 spelled out, and other places it'll say STE 100. So you just want to make sure things like that are consistent. Of course, make sure the address is correct, the name, the phone number, the website, and everything is consistent. If you have a legal firm and it's legal firm LLC, and in some places it says legal firm LLC, but in other places it says LF LLC to stand for legal firm, it's just an abbreviation. You want to make sure these types of things are consistent, because that can look like two different businesses just because you wanted to use an abbreviation. Now let's get into keyword research. So the first thing you want to do is look at your pages and check out their current performance when it comes to the keywords that they're ranking for. So if you're pruning pages or consolidating pages, you want to make sure you're not removing any pages that already perform well. And this is also the beginning point of doing our keyword research and mapping. So the first thing you want to do is make sure you're not messing with any pages that are bringing in pretty good traffic. Then we're going to put together a keyword map. So you want to research keywords for each page, and you want to prioritize those keywords matching search intent first. So you can check competitors if you need, but make sure whatever keyword you're looking at, you go and actually check out the SERPs using incognito mode to make sure that your page will rank within Google. If you have a list article and it's 10 best ways to tie a tie, but your article is how to tie a tie, then you're likely not going to rank for that keyword that you're targeting. You'll need to change your article to be something like 11 ways to tie a tie, or something that matches the search intent. After doing that, you'll want to map primary and secondary keywords to each of the pages on the site. This will help you have a target keyword when you're writing your titles and optimizing the page. This will also point out any issues with cannibalization while you're working on the site. And after mapping these keywords, I like to create the title, description, and H1 based on the keyword. I just think it's a pretty easy thing to do, and I usually include it right in the sheet. When you're doing your keyword mapping, this is essentially how you want it to look. I put together an example here. So we have our URLs over here in the first column, and then we have our primary keyword, and then a title, and then we would have a description here and a H1. So putting this together will help us see all the keywords we're targeting, just to make sure we're not cannibalizing any of these pages. So if two of these pages have the same keyword or very similar, we know that they could possibly cannibalize, so we can consolidate those, or maybe even change the keyword for one of the other pages and redo the content. We can also put together these titles that easily target the primary keyword and the description and H1. This can also be achieved using AI. So there's plenty of AI tools that will put together this kind of keyword mapping. You can also check out the keyword mapper I made in ChatGPT. Just search for keyword mapper AI SEO wizard. And you can just put in your URL and it'll give you keywords based on your URL and a recommended title. When it comes to on-page optimization, you usually want to implement the title, description, and H1 from the keyword map. This allows you to easily influence the most significant SEO elements pretty quickly before going through and doing a more in-depth page-by-page optimization. So when you're optimizing on-page content, make sure you prioritize foundational and revenue driving pages first. So these are going to be the pages like the home page, or any pages that are needed on the site, like a services page, and then also the revenue driving pages. So those are pages where people are actually converting. And then you'll do ongoing page by page optimizations based on priority. So if your site is a plumbing site and you have a certain service that you want to optimize for, that's really important for you, for example, toilets, then you could start with those kind of pages and make your way throughout the site, going page by page by priority. And on-page optimization methods are going to be using AI. So you can use Surfer, ClearScope, SEO writing AI, and there's a lot of other on-page optimization tools. Many of them use AI. There are some that use TF IDF, but I would recommend using ones that actually use AI. And if you see anyone trying to optimize for keyword density, then I would not recommend doing that. Keyword density is pretty outdated SEO concept. So I would recommend using AI whenever possible. And if you can't use AI, if you don't have an AI tool, you can use a TF IDF tool like SEO Power Suite, for example. Internal linking is one of the more difficult concepts for people to understand in SEO. So you want to do a high-level internal linking audit during your technical audit. And this is really just taking a look at the pages to see how many internal links are on each page. Does it look like an excessive amount? Does it look like not that many or none? And you can also pull one of the link reports from Screaming Frog to take a look at this as well. And I would separate it into its own project if there's little to no internal links, or if there's way too many internal links, because this is gonna be pretty time consuming if either of those is the issue. And you can also optimize internal links along with the on-page copy when you're going through each page doing in-depth optimizations. And we're going to continue here with internal linking. When it comes to the internal linking strategy, you want to link from the home page down to the categories, from the categories down to subcategories, etc. This helps you to keep the silos tight, and this also helps with topical relevance and topical authority. I would recommend 3 to 5 links per 1,000 words of content, and make sure you use relevant anchor text. So you want to use anchor text for the page that you're linking to. You want that to be the keyword for your anchor text. So if you're linking to a personal injury page from the home page, you want the anchor text to be something about personal injury. And we also want to be strategic with these internal links. I see a lot of SEOs just add random internal links throughout the site, and this really hurts the site structure and the silos. This essentially collapses the silos because links are just all over the place and they're not strategic. They're not allowing the link equity to flow throughout the site evenly. So here's a diagram of how your internal links should look from a high level. Of course, this is really basic, but it should give you a pretty good illustration of how things should look. So you should be linking from your home page down to the next level of pages, and then from those pages down to the relevant pages for them and continuing on. So if you have this home page, you link to the about page, and then from the about page, you link to the people that work there. You have services, you go to the category, you link from the category to the subcategories, and then from the subcategories, you link to the individual services. And same with locations. You link from locations page to the state, from the state to the cities. And you really could go from locations to cities if all of your locations are in the same state. You don't necessarily have to make a state subfolder. Many people will just add links going all over the place. And the way you can see that these arrows are nice and clean and how all of this looks clean, this is essentially how you want to think about your website. So you don't need links from your individual service way down here linking all the way back up to the home page. The home page is the most powerful page on the site. So we don't need any link equity going from these pages back to the home page. The home page already has it. So we just want to be linking down to these pages. And think about if you have some link equity going from the home page and flowing down to these pages in an organized way, it essentially will power up these pages that are way down here at the bottom, these individual services, because the link equity can flow so easily, as opposed to if you have links going back from each of these back to the home page, it's not really flowing as well. A lot of it is going to be leaking to these other pages that you're linking to. So you want to keep this as clean as possible when you're doing your internal linking. When it comes to the blogs, it's a little bit different because you do have a little more flexibility when it comes to internal links. It does make sense to link to other blog posts sometimes. So you want to essentially follow the same rules, but you can be a little more loose with the rules. You should also use your best performing blog posts to link to your money pages. So if you have a blog post that gets a lot of traffic and it has a lot of backlinks, then you can use that to link to your cosmetic dentistry page or your personal injury page, and it'll help power up that page. And if all of your internal linking is clean and organized, it'll power it up even more than opposed to you just having random links everywhere. It's not going to make as much of a difference. And here's a diagram for internal links for blogs. So I replaced this about page that was over here with the blog page. So we're linking from the home page to the blog, and then from the blog to the categories. And then each of the blog posts is within a category page. And so since these blog posts are performing well, as an example, we'll link those back to the service pages. And this will help power up these service pages and give them more authority and allow them to rank better. We don't need to link from these practice pages or these services pages back to the blog pages, because we don't want the link equity to flow that way. We want the link equity to stay within these pages here at the bottom where we make money. We can also link our locations pages to our services pages, and that will help them out as well. And this is a better user journey if someone lands on the city page and then they get directed to one of these services pages. That makes sense. What we don't want is someone to land on one of these services pages and then go back to the blog page. That's essentially backwards. These are our money pages. These are bottom of the funnel pages. So if someone landed on one of these product pages, it's because they were searching for that product or that service. So we want them to convert there. We don't necessarily want them to go back to the blog and look through the site and have more time to think about it. We want them to convert right here on the page that they landed, if they landed at the bottom of the funnel in this way. So I put together this equation, I would say, when it comes to internal links, and I would say SEO-friendly site architecture equals organized URL structure plus strategic internal links. This is how you have the best site architecture, internal linking strategy, and it helps with better crawling, indexing, and link equity flow. Again, internal links is one of the most difficult things when it comes to SEO, but it's really important. Now let's take a look at ongoing SEO strategies. So after you've optimized the site, fixed everything you could, these are what you're going to want to focus on after all of the SEO fundamentals have been implemented. So these are going to be the focus after all of the SEO best practices are taken care of. Really, it's three things: re-optimizing your money pages over and over again, creating content, and building links. This is pretty much the three main things you need to do for your ongoing SEO strategy, and you'll see success. When it comes to re-optimizing money pages, you want to constantly be looking for opportunities to improve headings, content, titles, descriptions. You can look for competitor sites. Maybe they have some content that's on their page, but you don't have that on your page. So you might want to add an extra section of content or FAQs. There's all kinds of things you can do to re-optimize these money pages, and you want to be constantly looking for these opportunities. Create strategic content. So you're going to have to create content for your site. It's an ongoing thing for SEO. So the best way to do this is to put together a strategy for it. So you should have some pretty good ideas if you already did a content audit of what pages perform well. So you can put together topic ideation for those kind of topics. You can do a competitor content gap analysis to see what pages your competitors are ranking that you're not ranking for. You can get ideas from the client. If it's not your site, maybe they have ideas of content to put together. And you could check out ChatGPT. Just make sure you have it separate the ideas by search intent, so you don't have a lot of ideas that all belong on the same page. And creating the strategic content is what really helps to build topical authority and topical relevance. After doing your topic ideation, you want to put together as many topics as you can. So 50 to 100 topics, I would say. And then after that, you'll want to do keyword research around those topics just to make sure you're not cannibalizing any of those pages that you plan to create, or that you're cannibalizing any of the pages that are already on your site. This is often a step that people miss when it comes to creating strategic content, and they just make a ton of pages and a lot of them end up cannibalizing each other. And then as a SEO strategist, I've had to go through and consolidate tens or hundreds of pages because they're all just cannibalizing each other. So make sure you do the keyword research around these topics. That's a very important step before moving forward. After you've done that, you can put together an editorial calendar. And this really just is a list of the topics, the target keyword. You can put the search intent if you want. And you can also put examples of competitor pages if you want. You don't have to, but it's usually good to give the writer some kind of example if you're giving this to a writer. If you're just using AI for all of this, then that's not necessarily the most important thing to do, unless you're using something like Junia where you can pick the sources. Then you may want to include some competitor sites in there. You can do content briefs for these articles that you're creating. You can use AI, or you can create manual briefs yourself. So this just includes the title, description, H1, outline of the article, and what information to include. You can also include things like internal links, competitor articles, opportunities for featured snippets, call to action suggestions. You pretty much can put anything you want in this content brief to make sure it reads the way you intend. But I would for sure make sure to include the H1 description, title, in the outline as a minimum. And then of course you can send these to the writer, or you can put this in AI. Some of the AI tools make their own content brief to begin with, so that's up to you. Another ongoing strategy you're going to have is building backlinks. This of course is one of the most time intensive processes when it comes to doing SEO. So you can use AI tools to help you out, like Backlink GPT or Mentioned. Those are two of my favorite. You can also pull competitor backlinks and look to see if you can get any of those. You can take a look at local directories. If you have a local site, then these are going to be really important. Those local directories and those citations. Check for competitor broken backlinks to see if they have any broken backlinks that maybe you could reach out to the editor of the site and get your site to replace that broken backlink. You can do manual outreach to other site owners and try to get them to feature you on their site, which of course is going to be a very time-intensive process, but can work sometimes. You can look for guest posting opportunities, or you can use services like White Spark or Bright Local to get those local links if you have a local website. You can also look up directories. So there's usually location directories, and we just covered that, but you can Google location in quotes and add the plus directory, and it'll give you a list of directories for that location. And then you'll also want to do the same thing for niches in your industry. So whatever your niche is, just Google niche in quotes plus directory, and it'll give you all the directories that are for that niche alone. You can also use other kinds of services like No BS, authority builders, etc. And these usually give you some pretty significant links, but you also have to pay for them. So they usually range from maybe $100 for a domain rating of 10 to get a link like that. And if you want a link for a domain rating of say 80 or 90, then that could cost you anywhere from a few $100s to a few $1,000s. So these services are pretty good, but you just have to make sure it's trustworthy and they're building credible links. And your ongoing backlink acquisition is definitely going to be based on your budget. And the advanced methods of doing backlinks are to use Scrapebox to pull niche links from all over the internet. And this is a little more advanced because you have to use proxies and you have to know how to set up Scrapebox. But it is a pretty decent way to find some backlink opportunities in your niche. And then of course you can use black hat methods like automated links, PBNs, Parasite SEO, or Reddit strats. Now you're in the top 1% of AI SEO experts. Congratulations. Make sure you keep yourself there by subscribing to this channel, turning on the notifications so you can get cutting edge AI software for SEO. Check out these other videos of AI software you should be using for SEO.